So earlier this year, I got a little bored and I decided I would try my hand at macro photography. And boy, did I suck. My name is Jason and I'm a photographer living here in coastal Georgia. I spend most of my free time trying to see if I can get images like this without spending a lot of this. So if you want to see if we can figure out this hobby without frying our finances, stick around. Hello, and welcome to another video. Like I mentioned earlier this year, I got a little tired of shooting the same old subject. Birds were getting kind of boring, having a hard time finding snakes and frogs. So I was in a little bit of a rut and I wanted to try something new. And I got to seeing all these really fantastic macro videos on TikTok, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts, and a light bulb went off in my head. You actually have a macro lens somewhere. So I dug through all my gear and found my trusty, crusty Sigma 150 2.8 macro that I probably haven't picked up in 8 years. So I've got a lens, got a camera. I go outside looking for macro subjects to shoot. Surely I know enough about photography at this point that I can get some pretty good images, right? Wrong. Because man, did those photographs stink.
It's garbage, and the editor is garbage.
So I thought to myself, this is probably why you quit doing macro photography years ago, because this is not as easy as it seems. Well, this time I was not going to quit. I was going to figure something out. So another spoiler alert, I got much better. And I decided to make this video to kind of show you guys the ins and outs of what I was able to figure out and what worked and what didn't work. That way, if you're thinking about getting into macro photography, maybe you can avoid some of the mistakes that I made. All right, so the first thing I learned right off the bat is you're just about going to have to use flash. Very seldom are you going to have enough ambient light to do any really quality macro work. I'm sure in perfect situations it'll work out, but I found out that just about always they're going to have to use a flash. And the reason being is you're using such really small apertures, really high f-stops, that you need a lot of light to combat that. So you're almost always going to be using a flash. Now you're probably thinking that since you know you got to use flash, you can use your on-camera flash. Well, that doesn't work out too good. The main problem with that is with macro lenses, you're dealing with a subject that's really close to the front of your lens. So the light from your flash actually doesn't fall on your subject. So you end up with this eclipse effect because the front of your lens is obscuring the light from your flash from your subject. So I thought, no problem, I'll just use a speed light. Well, that doesn't work out too good either because you still got your light way up here away from your subject. You can't deflect it down enough to point directly at your subject. And you're dealing with the fact that it is really harsh light. So the light that you do get down on your subject is really harsh and you end up with a lot of reflections and high contrast, just really washed out images. Not much good for anything. So that's when I figured out I had to use some type of reflection and diffusion to improve on my macro shots. I needed something to reflect the light down towards my subject, and I need something to diffuse it and spread it out so that I'm not overexposing my images and getting these nasty, contrasty, blown out subjects. A lot of people don't realize that when you're shooting insects or spiders, the compositions of their bodies, their carapaces and their abdomens and stuff, they're made of materials that are really reflective. So when you expose them to really bright light, you get that bright light kick back at you and you end up with some really nasty reflections. A lot of times those reflections are too significant to even try to fix in post. So now I figured out that I need a way to reflect the light and I need a way to spread it out and diffuse it. So what am I going to do? Yes, they do make dedicated macro photography flash rigs. Some of those are pretty outstanding. I do not own one of those yet. So I watched several DIY videos with some budget solutions of how to build my own flash diffuser. And I saw some with copy and paper and some with notebook paper and some with tracing paper, some with milk jugs. And I was pretty impressed how a lot of that worked, so I decided to come up with my own version of it. And what I did was come up with this right here. This is just a sheet of opaque plastic that I ordered off of Amazon. And I just cut a hole in it, taped it to the top of my speed light. And I'm not going to lie, this works pretty darn well. I'll post some pictures here, some shots I've taken with this contraption. Works pretty well. Easy to move in and out of the field, but it's not the best solution. So I got to thinking, what else do I have around here that would help me take better macro photographs? What other kind of lighting equipment do I have that would help me improve on these images? So then I thought, you big dummy, you got soft boxes around here. Try it with a soft box. So that's what I did. I just started carrying around a soft box and a light stand. I've actually got a little handle that'll go on here so I can hold it if I need to. Got a clamp mount back here for your speed light. Of course, I'm putting a wireless transmitter on my camera. So this is what I started doing. I've got this one and I've got another one that's a little bit smaller. And that's how I started getting a lot of really nice macro photographs. Now, is that very convenient? No. If you're going to be doing a lot of walking, going to a botanical gardens or a zoo or something like that, you probably don't want to carry around a light stand and a soft box. But I do a lot of my macro photography around my house. I live in the woods, got an endless supply of critters around my house. So I just carry around my light stand and my soft box in my backyard. Another thing I started doing is at night I'll put out a light station, hang up a couple of white sheets and put out a mercury vapor bulb and some black lights to attract insects to my backyard. And I put a small table up in front of my light stand, and I'll put little tree limbs and twigs and plants and stuff all over that table. So when the insects are attracted to the lights, a lot of times they'll land on these twigs. Sometimes if I'm really careful, I can move them to the twigs. A lot of times they will fly off. But my setup is so close to the lights that a lot of time the insects land on there anyway. And I leave enough space where I can move around and I can photograph the insects. Okay, so what kind of equipment do you need? Obviously, you can get as expensive as you want, just like any other type of photography. There are super expensive macro lenses out there. There are really nice cameras that are really well suited to macro photography, especially the ones made by Olympus that have the photo stacking software already loaded in it. And that's another thing that I learned really quick is that to get really good macro photographs, you have to be able to use focus stacking. When you're using macro lenses, the depth of field is so razor thin on those, even if you're shooting at high f-stops like f8, f10, f12, even higher, your depth of field is still so razor thin that it's almost impossible to get the whole insect in focus. Unless you get a broadside profile shot, it's almost impossible. If you're shooting from the front end, if you're shooting the head, you'll get only the mouth parts in focus. You'll get only the eye in focus. You'll get only a leg in focus. So you pretty well have to learn how to do focus stacking to get the really good images like you see online or on social media. So when it comes to getting images for a focus stack, there's two ways to do it. Number one is to use your lens's focus ring. So in other words, you get close enough to your subject, get it in focus, and then just start taking photos and turning your camera's focus ring. And the other way to do it is to get your subject in focus and then just start taking shots as you move closer and further back. Now, in theory, you've got a bunch of images of the same subject with different parts of that subject in focus on each one of them. So what you're going to do is you're going to load that into some photo editing software, whatever kind of stacking software you want to use. I use Photoshop, and the software can actually digitally overlay those images to where they match up. And it'll use those parts of the image that are in focus to create one composite image. So when you get it done and you get it rendered, you end up with an image that looks a lot better because more of the subject is in focus than if you just got one shot. The thing is, it's not foolproof. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it doesn't work at all. Sometimes it's a crapshoot, at least for me. But then again, I'm still learning how to do it. So I'm not the best at it in the world. But here lately, over the last few months, I've gotten some pretty good stuff doing photo stacking. As far as what kind of camera you need, use the one you got. If you don't have one, you don't have to buy a brand new one. Get the best camera you can afford. Again, the general rule in photography is get the best lens you can afford. So if you can get you a good used camera, I've actually got a D7200 here that I've used for macro photography too. Get that and get you a good lens. You don't have to go get you a 150 millimeter macro right off the bat. You can get a smaller 40 or 50 millimeter macro, something that's affordable, and that's going to do just fine for you. I have heard that the Takina 100mm f2.8 macro is a great lens for the money. If you look at the Flickr page for that, you can see that there's a lot of good images out there from people using that lens. Same way with the smaller Nikon, the 40mm. I haven't read a lot about Canons and Sonys and Olympus just because I don't use them. I'm a Nikon guy for whatever that's worth. So I only know about Nikon F-mount. I don't even have a Nikon mirrorless yet. You may not even need to purchase a macro lens. I picked this up a while back. This is the Raynox DCR 250, and I've been pretty impressed with how good this actually works. And what you do with this is, and I've actually got it on the front of this lens, is you just clamp it on the front of your kit lens or whatever lens you want to use. It'll fit on several different size lenses, but if it doesn't, you'll have to get some adapter rings. But it fits nicely on this 18 to 70 I got right here. And this effectively turns this lens into a macro lens. And this actually works pretty dang good. I've been pretty amazed with how effective this little DCR 250 is, and you can get it for less than $100. So if you've already got a kit lens, want to get into macro, you might look into this right here. I do want to mention that I've tried macro with my D7200s, my D7500, and it works okay. You would think with the 1.5 crop factor that would give you an advantage, and maybe it does to a degree. But what I have found is that my full frame D810 does much better on macro photography. I don't even use my DX cameras anymore for macro. Love the D7500, love the D7200. I still think they're one of the best bang for the buck DSLR bodies out there. But for macro photography, I have found out that full frame is the way to go for me. Hello? I'm recording.
Can you see it?
No, what's... Oh, I see. You're a little gangster.
Do you like
now.
it?
I guess, yeah. That matters if you like it.
I like it.
You look like a little prisoner. Because my daughter just came in here and she cut part of her eyebrow out. What the hell? Anyway, we digress. You can also do macro photography with point and shoot cameras. Most of them do have a macro setting on the camera itself. The problem with this is you can't use speed lights or off-camera flash, so you're stuck with using the ambient light. And I'll be honest with you, trying to do it with ambient light is just really hard. You're going to want to stick to a DSLR or a mirrorless, something with a dedicated flash speed light that you can use on camera or off camera. You're going to be so much happier in the long run. So there you have it, my reintroduction to macro photography. Didn't make this video to kind of give you a ton of information, just to kind of explain my process, my journey over the last several months, getting back into it, coming from point A to point B, and to show you that you can get into it with basic equipment. You don't have to spend a lot of money. I mean, heck, you could probably put together this setup right here with the lens, the flash, the body, and the Raynox DCR 250. You could put this together for well under $500. And with that gear right there, you can get an image like this right here. So don't think you got to spend a lot of money to get into the macro hobby. Probably will make more videos in the future as I continue down this macro journey. I don't ever see myself becoming a dedicated macro photographer, but I would like to get better, and I definitely see room for improvement here. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is the Jason C. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.